So I took your recommendation and I got both Ancient Magus Bride parts on sale, and it does look kind of cool, but I'm just not sure it's going to be my kind of anime.
That is the best anime ever, and it's my favorite. You definitely need to watch it, or you're going to regret your entire life.
Well, this anime has some pretty big shoes to fill if that's your recommendation.
And they're gonna fill them. Hey, why'd you call me?
I want to be a Magus Bride!
I think everyone does.
私はここ
Oh, Alias, won't thy please rescue me from this captivity known as quarantine? A popular coin of phrase that rang constantly in my head when watching this series was, "Love is the strongest magic there is." Which is such a sweet concept that can just melt anyone's heart, in my opinion. That is, until you see magic like this. Holy shit! Get Beauty and the Beast out of here! Let's stand Little Red Beauty and the Skeleton Beast! It's hard to not get ahead of myself here when today I'm talking about the fantasy-centered story adapted in 2017 by Wit Studio. A seemingly magical kind of love story shrouded in mystery established by manga creator Korei Yamazaki, but also a tale that holds a deep, brewing darkness behind its characters that intrigued the anime community to see what it truly means to be the Ancient Magus Bride. That's the name of the series if you couldn't tell. Now, it should come as no surprise to any of you who's been on the channel for this long that I'm a fan of darker stories and themes. I mean, I have a video called Why I Love Yandere's, for God's sake. But believe it or not, I'm actually a big fan of romance in general, especially when it's portrayed so wholesomely in anime. Can't get enough of that cute shit. So obviously mixing romance and dark fantasy together into an anime would spark a pretty big interest for me. And now that we have all this time being stuck in quarantine, not being able to do anything else but watch anime, I can't think of a better time to be whisked away into a story that looks just as intriguing as this one. Albeit way later than I actually meant to, because I've had a good friend pester me for a very long time to start this series, but I just haven't done it yet. But now I'm finally doing it, so they can stop sending me so many text messages. Seriously, stop it. I'm doing it. Look, I'm doing it! As enchanting as this series comes off at first glance, it doesn't waste any time hiding the sharpness of its thorns as the main heroine Casi is center stage amongst a mysterious auction, an event she willingly signed herself to be a part of. Apparently deemed to be a high-quality item, bids start pouring in left and right until a mysterious figure just waltzes right up to Casi, and in a true Slumdog Millionaire move, blows the rest of the bids out of the water. This very tall, shadowy figure reveals himself as Alias Ainsworth, a Skull Faced Mage who, after making his extreme payment, whisks the two of them away using teleportation magic all the way to his home in London, where he reveals his intent to train the frail girl as his apprentice. After quickly and awkwardly welcoming her into his home in a warmly fashion, it turns out red hair isn't the only uncommon thing about Casi, as she is known in the magical world as a sleigh beggy, an extremely rare type of person that has a strong affinity for seeing and connecting with magical creatures, making her more than capable of being a powerful mage if she can place faith in their powers, whether it be for better or potentially worse. And Elias expresses his intent into training that potential so she can become a fine mage in this day and age. After witnessing firsthand the dangers that can lurk in this magical world, Casi decides to place her trust in the mysterious man who has shown her nothing but kindness since their meeting. So much, in fact, that she's only slightly taken aback when Alias proclaims he hopes to one day make Casi his bride. Thus begins a new life of magic and intrigue for the fledgling apprentice, as this is only the beginning of what this skull-faced mage has in store when teaching the bride-to-be. Psh, the royal wedding is old news. I'm all here for a mage's wedding! Right out of the gate when starting the Ancient Magus Bride, I felt really drawn into the world that was being presented to me, because there's just something so oddly charming about a fantasy story implementing all those magical kind of elements in a real-world kind of setting, which has been a proven combination that makes things extremely popular. If Harry Potter is an example of that, as those kind of stories give off the vibes of, oh, I really could be invited to a wizarding school, or a mage really could spend thousands of dollars in order to make me their apprentice. You know, it's possible. Whimsical only begins to describe the whole atmosphere of this series' setting, as it seamlessly uses real-world London as a center point amongst a huge bustle of magical activity. And when I say seamless, I really mean it, as we come to observe through the eyes of Casi just how much fantasy is naked to the common eye, portraying a harmonious balance between both worlds that flows together in all walks of life. While the concept of anything magical is relatively unknown to the regular people just walking down the streets, a lot of the scenes depict the most common occurring spirits called fairies being constantly around humans living their day-to-day lives. And it never feels out of place because of how perfectly balanced this world gets fleshed out early on in the story. Of course, not everyone would be oblivious to all these magical elements, as in order to keep a true balance between two worlds, they have to be able to support one another, which gets introduced to us with people like Angelica running a secret business producing magic-enhancing items to help fellow mages out with their work, which does include her tough attitude that can even keep the infamous Thorn Mage at bay. And in return, we see these people use these magical enhanced items to help those in need, as we even see churches relying on magic when the kind-hearted Simon asks for help solving the many issues that pop up from time to time, truly signifying the unity of fantasy mixed with reality. And that's just barely scratching the surface on how amazing the impact the combination of fantasy and reality is being portrayed here. Like, if Iceland really holds a lost land of dragons, then I'm on the first flight out of here as soon as possible. Cats having 9 lives is an actual reality in this world, for crying out loud. Seriously, Casi and I are leaving here for sure. Naturally, the existence of magic can't just stem from a simple explanation of "come on down to London, the birthplace of magic and dragons." As wondrous as London may be, but spells and potions all come from the help of the fairies co-inhabiting this world. These magical beings exist in all sorts of shapes and sizes, living all across the world. From the more common pixie-sized fairies showing off their mischievous tendencies when trying to lure humans away from their home, to even the more well-known ones like elves dedicating themselves to protecting nature. But they can all be traced back to the fairy kingdom ruled over by the Radiant Queen Titania and mischievous King Oberon, two entities that stem from actual European folklore, which is the basis for almost all the fairies found in this series. Personally, I love learning about all sorts of folk tales that involve fantasy elements and magical kind of beings, and I always feel such an appreciation when I'm able to identify a creature just based on its design that's being used in these series that's actually based on real folk tales. And Magus Bride does an amazing job when it comes to portraying the world of fairies that uses actual folktale lore. In this series, most forms of magic can only be performed with the help of these creatures lending their power in order to perform all sorts of spells that can bend the natural order of the world, such as teleportation, powerful gusts of wind, generating explosive bursts of flame, and so on. Mages are the most common people to perform magic this way, whether it be for combat purposes or simply just going about their day in a timely fashion. But naturally, these magical properties can be mixed into all sorts of potions and recipes that are just meant to help the common man with illness or even achieving a good night's rest once in a while. Hence why any sort of magic creature found in this world is just as important as fairies. I mean, come on, besides the badass dragons, they have adorable woolly bugs that produce magic-infused wool. This is why Wooloos took the world by storm last year. They even have actual magical reindeer, oh my god! However, despite being beneficial to humans, there's almost always a give-and-take relationship when it comes to these dealings, whether it be with sharing goods or potentially risking your own life if you're not careful with excessive spell use. Which is further exemplified with the sweet Titania's overprotective nature when it comes to offering Casi a home in her kingdom, stating it would be best for her to give up on her humanity instead of risking her life all the time, further showcasing the need for an air of caution in the world of magic despite how beneficial it really could be. Although, if living in the fairy kingdom means I can live like Titania's sadist husband under her mystical rule, I don't see the problem here, honestly. Under ordinary circumstances, most mages in practice can learn to regulate how much magical energy they take in and use when seeking out assistance from fairies, but when you're a slay beggy like Casi, the risks are much greater. Despite being naturally gifted with absorbing magic constantly from birth, the trade-off takes a heavy toll on Casi as her body doesn't know how to regulate so much magic at once, causing her normal well-being to be much weaker than most and is ultimately shortened her lifespan in the long run, which unknowingly was the cause that made her life too difficult to bear after her own mother jumped to her death cursing Chisei's birth, resulting in her giving herself over to the auction house to begin with. A truly unfair hand she was dealt with that makes you just want to pour the sweet girl some hot cocoa and tell her it will all be okay, damn it. Luckily, being saved by Alias sparks a newfound fire in her soul as she trains to regulate her magic, resulting in newfound abilities she never even dreamed she would be able to perform. But arguably the most powerful skill she awakens within herself is her ability to care. Seriously, this isn't just to be sentimental. Chisei is the epitome of that one friend who never says they're hungry, but will make damn sure her loved ones are eating as much as possible. She constantly risks actual harm to herself when it comes to using magic that can be very beneficial to the people she's met, especially when it comes to her newfound family despite the constant lectures, which is why she needs a familiar like Ruth constantly by her side to serve as a literal watchdog in order to make sure she stays safe even when she's going up and beyond for someone in need. What I find very admirable about Chisei being this kind of character is she just didn't start out like this. We got to see this aspect about her grow in a realistic fashion as the character gained so much more meaning in her life. She'll see so many aspects she wished she grew up with in her life when meeting all these different people, and in turn wants to protect them all so they don't have to suffer in any way like she has before, which also gives back some of those feelings she's lost slowly over time, and that's a great journey to see in a main character. You know, becoming a bloody wizard aside. Perhaps it was being so similar to one another that fate brought Chisei to the welcoming embrace of Alias as the beacon of light that illuminated her journey towards this newfound path.
God, I want him my
Took the words right out of my mouth. Stepping off the simp train for a moment, Alias from his skeleton face and menacing stature radiates quite the mysterious aura about his character, which is a perfect contrast to his more simple yet oddly innocent mannerisms that flesh out his personality in a way that makes it hard to not find charming. I never thought calling someone a puppy would sound like a compliment, but lo and behold, it sounds like a good thing coming from him. While he is clearly a powerful mage when showcasing his magic capabilities, looking like such an abnormal kind of being often gets him misjudged and even hated by some in the world of fairies, often criticizing that he is more beast than man. And well, if they're going off the instances when he's in full rage mode, yeah, I can see why they might think that. But as Chisei comes to understand more about him, it's clear that even though he is very knowledgeable in the world of magic, he has little to no understanding of normal human emotions, ultimately stemming from his unknown origins to which his former master Lindell graciously shares with Chisei. Way before becoming the lovable guardian of the Dragon Sanctuary, Lindell had a chance encounter with the mysterious Skull Faced beast that claimed he had no memories of his past or where they even were. Not being able to be identified as either human or fairy, the name Alias was given to the boy from Lindell's own master, and together worked in teaching him about the world, including learning magic, which puts a lot about his character into perspective when you really think about it. It may not be a direct answer to why Alias is the way he is, but it's an interesting piece to the puzzle that the story is crafting about his identity that I don't think would work any other way without it being mostly shrouded in mystery. Mysterious bad boys get all the fans, what can I say? One of the big central themes that got established early on in the story was the importance of family. After all, Alias referring to Chisei as such was the only thing that kept her from losing her humanity in the first episode. But this lesson about how important bonds are is constantly explored with characters outside of our main duo. I think it's pretty safe to say that almost all the characters, regardless of how little they appear in the 24 episode run, teaches Chisei along with the audience the importance of connecting with others and having close family-like bonds that can bring you happiness in life. Which you may think it would start to sound like a broken record when it's taught so often in the series, but the way the story creatively showcases different aspects of it makes it a refreshing lesson all the way through. Families are often conceptualized as an expansive group of many people related to one another, but that isn't the only aspect that makes someone family. After all, most pet owners consider their animals as family despite the obvious difference in species. But it all comes down to how much you appreciate and how fondly you hold someone in your heart, just like how the stubborn Alice feels when it comes to her alchemist master, Renfred. What started out as an obligatory debt she felt for him taking her in became a genuine relationship of trust after witnessing how much he cares despite his stern personality, resulting in Alice willing to risk anything when it comes down to helping him as she views him as her only family despite no actual relation to him. Silky, who is the housekeeper of the Ainsworth home, is a sad and perfect example of this as well, as her entire being as a banshee was to mourn the loss of family. But when being shown that she can form those bonds anew with different people, she was able to accept the idea of family isn't only limited by blood, but is made by how strong the connections you can make with those around you, which is further exemplified with how cute she acts when showing affection for the growing family in her master's home. But obviously I can't talk about how important connections are supposed to be shown in this anime without talking about the main defined example throughout the story, and you bet it's leading into shipping territory as I'm talking about the growing relationship between Chisei and Alias. Cliche as it may be, referencing Beauty and the Beast as a metaphor for how the dynamic between these two characters appear, it stands to time that the tale of a cute girl becoming attached to a beast works as an example for human growth. But the way the Ancient Magus Bride paints it is different enough to the point where it felt completely new, and honestly became my favorite example of it. Like I was saying earlier, the way these two are both naturally drawn to one another stems from how similar yet also very different they are from each other. But over the course of them living together as master and apprentice, they learn so many new aspects about themselves through each other's eyes, which just further enriches each of their own lives in ways they didn't think were possible. Way before the auction, Chisei didn't hold any value to her life because of her past trauma, but being thrust further into the world of magic and developing a whole new family made her life actually worth savoring in her eyes. And none of that was possible without Alias seeing the potential her life still had left. Granted, with Alias not truly understanding human emotions if his one-day proposal was any indicator, it makes sense that his more logical viewpoints can come off as cold or insensitive, but his natural curiosity about Chisei's human feelings sparks actual emotions inside of him one flicker at a time, as he grows more fond of her being around, causing him to actually take care with his actions with what he says or how he goes about protecting her from harm, because he doesn't want to lose these feelings for her. I, no joke, started getting a bit teary-eyed with how wholesome and sweet the connection between these two was growing when Alias explained how his home is cold and lonely without Chisei around. And when they were finally brought back together in that beautiful moment, it sparked so many warm feelings inside of me that truly reflects just how amazing the growth these two have made even only halfway through the series. As cheesy as it may be, Chisei's the one actually teaching the true magic here. After all, what stronger magic could there be than the ability to care for one another? Well, according to the internet, magic that could kill you might be stronger. Who would have thought? Magic is very beneficial in improving the lives of the people who use it, but that doesn't always mean it's gonna be positive for everybody. After all, fairies have been proven to not always have your best interests in mind when it comes to working with them, to the point where they can inflict actual harm or just feed off of humans just because it's in their nature, showing how dangerous it could be to blindly trust any spirit offering help in this world. Human beings are very complicated creatures with many different emotions and desires that can make them easy prey for anyone harboring malicious intent. As seen later in the story when the young girl Stella angrily wished her brother to disappear, and a wandering spirit happened to take that wish literally by erasing the sibling's existence just to toy with the poor girl's heart. This example shows how dealing with these sort of magical beings can be very tricky with how unpredictable they could be to someone not born with magic capabilities, which is why a more scientific approach of using one's life energy to perform magic was created instead, known as sorcery. Sorcerers walk a similar yet different path as mages because they learn to manipulate the natural flow of life rather than simply bend to its will, which sounds like a rather safer alternative, but the experiments performed to achieve the same results are just as risky, seeing how they are chipping away at their own lives for better results, categorizing it as one of the darker aspects of humans being influenced by magic. Desire is by far the easiest path to corruption, and thanks to evil sorcerers out there like Cartaphilus exploiting humans for their own selfish experiments, it's easy to see how much of a dark shadow is casted from the bright light of magic in this world. After all, if it didn't, Chisei wouldn't have ended up yet again in an auction house where humans are willing to spend fortunes just for a taste of that kind of power, even at the expense of poor abducted dragons. Displaying how even a world filled with magic wouldn't just be black and white in terms of how people would utilize its benefits. The poor kidnapped dragon unfortunately realizes this as well, as it negatively transforms out of fear in order to free itself from captivity and attempts to destroy everyone in its wake. But by combining her two strongest abilities, Chisei uses her magic absorbing power to calm the anger dragon down despite the risk to her natural well-being. After all, her caring nature is just as strong as her magic capabilities, so it makes sense putting them together can stop even a frickin' dragon. Luckily, after the whole ordeal, Chisei managed to survive unscathed. Oh my god!
Wow.
Wow is right! Chisei, you're a real shonen protag now! Taking in so much of that dragon's magic has now left Chisei with a destructive curse, which if it's not taken care of, it will end up ending her life way before her time is supposed to be up. Now, obviously, killing the dragon she just saved would be out of the question for her, so both Alias and Chisei agree they need to find a way to keep their lives entwined long past this new hurdle, as the bond these two share has grown so deep that they couldn't fathom the idea of losing each other. For Alias, however, his lack of most empathy means he is willing to take matters into his own hands regardless if the methods are at the expense of others, as he did learn at the witches' gathering that sacrificing a life might be a way to free Chisei from her curse. You know, if you think about it, this wasn't entirely a new fact. After all, they already knew that killing the dragon would just lift the curse immediately.
Stella, どうし...
ごめんね。
Wow, jealous much? Jesus! Seriously, Alias tries to sacrifice Chisei's friend over the dragon because of how jealous he feels when Stella is around, and thinks Chisei would forgive that after the fact as long as he got it done before she wakes up. Oh, poor, beautiful, stupid mage. Despite stopping the ritual from being completed, Cartaphilus reveals himself to be controlling Stella and offers to free her as long as Chisei leaves with him. And right here we see just how deeply Alias's betrayal has wounded their connection, as Chisei vanishes after saying she can't be with him as he is now. Distraught doesn't even begin to truly express what Alias is feeling after this, as he is taken completely to his monstrous side, wreaking havoc in the forest due to him losing Chisei, feeling pain he never once thought would be possible for someone like him. Both the Fairy Queen and King arrive to quell the whirlpool of emotions raging inside of Alias, saying not to worry as they can bring Chisei home to the Fairy Kingdom and save her life at the same time. Truly a most tempting kind of offer, but ultimately gets rejected as Alias comes to his senses after the idea was proposed. Alias states he wants to be with Chisei as she is now, the selfless caring human fascinated in the world of magic, and he acknowledges in order to do so, he has to learn to be a better man, really showcasing just how much of an impact his apprentice has made deep inside his heart. A sweet realization that beckons the fairies to offer their assistance anyway. Elsewhere in a shady lab, Cartaphilus demands Chise's cursed arm as a trade for both Stella and the other missing dragon, which quickly turns into a forced bargain as the necromancer replaces Chise's own eye with his own just to see if they are compatible. God, just imagining what that would feel like is making my own eye twitch. Now entranced by sleep magic, Chise is now in the world of her own memories, and it's here where we see a happy Chise living with her family at a young age, revealing that her father was the one keeping the dark spirits away due to Chise's condition, and his sudden disappearance shifted the responsibility to her mother, which was too heavy of a burden for her to bear, trying to provide for her daughter and keep her safe from these dark spirits, and after giving into a moment of weakness, kills herself before she would do something to Chise she could not take back. As painful and heartbreaking these scenes were to watch, it was also relieving for both the viewers and Chise especially to know that her mother did indeed love her, and this warped perception that's been plaguing her all this time was never real. And she can finally move past it with her new family waiting ahead of her, which was the huge moment for the character we've been all waiting for this entire series. Awakened with newfound determination and the careful precision to not give herself a black eye, she peers into the memories of Cartaphilus in order to find a way to help him, which shockingly reveals that he was actually a gravekeeper named Joseph who one day stumbled upon the actual Cartaphilus almost dead in the ground. Turns out Joseph was actually a pretty sincere kid who made a vow to take care of his newfound friend in hopes to one day leave his past misfortune with all the townsfolk behind, but unfortunately gets pushed to the breaking point where he realizes the only way they can escape this life is by attaching their lives together, which in a world of magic is definitely feasible. What the newly combined Cartaphilus failed to realize was the being found in the dirt was actually cursed with an immortal decaying body, and merging together has fractured their sanity as they continue to seek out any way to get back on their feet and keep themselves going, resulting in the enemy Chise is facing today. Enraged by his fractured memories, Cartaphilus tries to kill Chise without remorse until Alias arrives, bringing with him the cavalry of Chise's friends. Understanding that Cartaphilus / Joseph is another suffering person she wants to save, she enlists her master's help, saying that if he ever truly wants to make up for what has happened, he'll go along with whatever her plan may be. And of course he agrees because Alias learned the lesson to never ever make your future bride angry twice in one day, a valuable lesson to learn indeed. Using the best support team she can ever ask for, Chise not only literally acts out a real eye for an eye situation, but uses her own magic to soothe the poor unstable boy into realizing that his suffering won't be forever, and helps him find peace in a good night's sleep. Or I guess in this case a really long sleep, but it sounded better the other way. Ironically, it turns out Cartaphilus did make good on his word that he can help Chise out with her impending doom, as now a fragment of his undying soul will keep the dragon's curse at bay for the time being, finally bringing things back to normal for the Ainsworth home, capped off with a heartwarming moment of bickering and silky hugs all around. But oh no, we aren't done with the emotional moments. As we follow Chise around London making arrangements and enjoying time with her friends, which all leads to what I think is the most beautiful moment of the anime, Chise's proposal. Oh my god! Looking divine in her wedding dress, to which makes Alias's heart skip a beat in reaction, places a ring on the mage's finger that signifies her vow to always stay by his side even through all the disagreements they may share, displaying one of the purest moments of affection as he accepts her vow, and together they head home as master and apprentice. But really, they're husband and wife at this point, come on! Oh my god, just thinking about how sweet and wholesome those last few moments were is making me feel a bit teary-eyed again. I'm a big romantic sap, what can I say? But that was the end of the Ancient Magus Bride, but not the entire story as the manga is currently ongoing. But for one season only, this was such a beautiful way to conclude the journey we were taking with these characters. I I feel like there are a lot of anime adaptations that struggle with giving a satisfying ending when there is more of the story out there that unfortunately doesn't get adapted, but despite a very minor hint at danger still lurking out there, pretty much all the storylines wrapped up in a way that you can take this as a complete story. I do know there are some prequel OVAs that go into more detail of Chisei's past, and we didn't get too much of a look into the magical college that exists that I'm sure the manga gets into more, but we got an ending that brings the development of both Alias and Chisei as incomplete individuals who now complete each other. And endless possibilities are waiting for them as they work towards a bright, happy future together. And in the end, that's all that really matters for them. I think a fair argument most people can make about magic is that the most appealing aspect about it is how beautiful it can be. Sure, levitating a candle is cool, but creating a burst of color in front of someone's eyes is arguably the more appealing thing to see. And luckily, Studio Wit had the same thing in mind when it came to animating this wondrous world of magic. The sheer amount of quality found in the animation is honestly just outstanding to behold when moments of pure magic just dances around the screen. To the point it feels like I'm watching more of a feature-length film from Ghibli or Comics Wave during these moments. But it's all coming from an episodic anime series that doesn't ever dip in quality. A very impressive feat and really necessary to capture the real magic behind the world of Magus Bride. I especially adored just how the art direction was constantly complemented by the lighting effects, whether it's from the sparkles of fairy dust to warping the perspective of Chisei as her eyes open to the wonders around her, which greatly added to the journey of self-discovery our main heroine was going through. It always knew when to sprinkle in an air of innocence to lighten the mood with chipified comedic moments that were really short, but hit the nail on the head every time to bring a chuckle to the viewer. Action-packed moments weren't always a central focus of the story, but when they did come up, each shot was always presented in a stylized way that often synced up to the soundtrack in a very intense way. You could just feel the immediate danger radiating from close-ups of Alias and get entirely engrossed at the flowing animation being thrust against the wind as we are taken up into the sky for cinematic eye candy. I've always admired the fiery beauty of a phoenix, and the way this series encompassed its form and magic might be my favorite shot from the anime for not just how gorgeous it looks, but for how it's a perfect representation of Chisei's transformation over the course of the story. And it's just one of the many examples of how animation can breathe a whole new life into a scene, and Studio Wit is high up in my quality tier list after watching this series. But of course, you cannot forget the other important factor when it came to presenting all these stylish visuals: the beautiful melodies. Enchanting doesn't even begin to describe how lovely a lot of the music pieces were. You could feel the adventurous spirit come to life in the forests when the fairies were surrounding the scene, to the more emotional pieces that the orchestra played out superbly when it came to invoking the bittersweetness of a conflict resolution, making it actually really hard to not feel the same way as the characters because of how perfect this combination was. Seriously, I was over the moon when they implemented singing to match the movements being carried out on screen, that it would have felt like a crime to watch this kind of performance without paying for it first. Also formed a wee bit of a crush on Lyndall in this moment, not gonna lie. The first opening here, performed by J-pop singer Juna, is an iconic song that gave the Ancient Magus Bride such an identity that it's the first thing that comes to mind when I think of the series. From its slow, quiet introduction of Chisei to the big ramp-up when Alias is introduced is a great representation of how somber Chisei's life was before being thrusted into her new life, making it a very memorable OP you think about during each episode. I actually don't think there is a single track from the series that I didn't like, as the melancholic takes on the ending themes were super soothing to listen to, and the second opening theme greatly played up the action from the previous core, although Although, because it was entirely made up of previous scenes, it unfortunately stuck out the least in comparison to everything else. My viewing experience with the series was with the subbed version, and while one can make an argument the series taking place in London would mean the English dub would be more fitting for the authenticity, the way Alias had a monotoned way of speaking was perfectly performed to show how unhuman he has lived his life, and worked really well with Chise's lifeless energy at the start of the story, that you can tell the chemistry between the voice actors was outstanding when seeing the evolution of both roles over the course of the story.
Alright, I guess this series proves that I should just listen to my friends more often when it comes to their recommendations. Because boy am I really kicking myself for not starting the Ancient Magus Bride sooner. And I'm supposed to be the one recommending anime to my friends! This is not right! I might need to turn in my weeb badge if I let another great one go by.
It's actually a bit difficult coming up with the words to properly express how I feel about this series that I didn't already say earlier throughout the video. That's just how fantastic my time with this series was. In this day and age, fantasy stories are constantly being created to the point that it's a never-ending buffet of things to enjoy, but it's truly the worlds that engage your every emotion that are the ones that stick with you long after you moved on to different stories. And to me, I think the creator of the Ancient Magus Bride came up with one of those worlds. It was able to portray a realistic balance between how beneficial and dangerous the ability to perform magic would be for humans, while still being able to remain creatively fresh when it came to the fantasy world being filled with all sorts of fairies and creatures based on real folk tales. That it's a perfect escapism kind of anime for those who've already dreamed that these elements exists somewhere out there. You just gotta go to London and find it. But the integral part of what made this series so special is the beautifully animated story of how a powerful mage rescued a poor girl from slavery and introduced her to a magical world where she can one day be a masterful mage and future bride. You know, the more I say it out loud, I get how that sounds iffy, but Alias had such a childlike mentality until Chise came around that I think it gets a bit of a pass here. Even though I'm a sappy romantic on the inside, I think most people could see just how flourishing this kind of dynamic can be when establishing character development. And I think the relationship these two share is a truly one-of-a-kind magic that makes the Ancient Magus Bride worth experiencing alone besides the amazing world it established, because it teaches you how important forming bonds and connections are when it comes to surviving in general. And in a way, the most unexpected relationships you make can be the ones that shine a guiding light in all the negativity and help you remember what it means to be truly happy. Thank you, Chise and Alias. While spells and potions can be very powerful, in the end, you two proved that love is the most powerful magic there is. And that a Skull Faced Mage is cute as all heck. Like, just look at him.
As always, guys, thank you so very much for watching this magical season premiere all the way to the end. God, it feels like forever since I've come out with a new video, even though in hindsight it really hasn't been that long. But in this crazy world we are currently living in, I'm trying to do my best to take better care of my mental health and a bit of my physical health, so I hope you'll forgive me if videos aren't always gonna be making it on that 1 month basis. I'll do my best, but you know, I need to put my own health first sometimes. Sometimes, I mean all times, I really need to be keeping up with my health more. But you know, that's also the message of Ancient Magus Bride. Take care of yourself, hang out with some friends, and create a little bit of magic. I am most definitely gonna start binging the English release of the manga as soon as I possibly can, and even maybe come up with a little magical kind of potion in order to charm Studio Wint into making another season, because I would love a season 2. Why is there no season 2? Sorry, I just would love a goddamn season 2 to this show, because I want to see more of this world come to life.
If you enjoyed the video, interacting with that like fairy would be a huge way to show your support. And if you want to stay up to date for any future videos I may release, hitting that good old subscribe button would be the best way to make sure you don't miss out on the next video. Also, you can check out my Instagram and Twitter for any behind the scenes stuff I might post here or there. I swear I'm trying to get better about that.
Now, if you'll excuse me, I think I need to do something to show my undying love for the Skull Faced Mage and show Studio Witch that we need a season 2.
Oh yeah. Perfect.